Welcome back to another edition of the Night Report podcast. I'm your host, Mike Broadbent. Joining me once again is my co-host, Richie O'Leary. We have a basketball schedule. It has been officially released as of 5 p.m. today. So we're going to go through that schedule, talk about areas that we think Rutgers got a little bit of favorable break, areas we thought Rutgers is going to have a tough stretch. Jon Rothstein was on campus yesterday to view a Rutgers practice. He had a lot of takeaways. We'll talk about that a little bit. And we each have 3 keys to beating VirginiaTech this Saturday. We'll go through those and what we think will be the most important factors in a potential Rutgers victory. But first, before we get started, this podcast is once again presented to you by Knight and Day Apparel. Get ready for football and tailgating season with Knight and Day Apparel. Our apparel is designed to keep you comfortable and stylish from the pregame excitement to the final whistle. Whether you're grilling in the parking lot or cheering from the stands, our high-quality gear will have you covered with unbeatable comfort and team spirit. If you use our promo code RutgersRivals, you get 10% off your purchase. Score big this season and keep shopping with Knight and Day Apparel.
Ooh, new Dark Side T-shirts. You got to pre-order them, but
yeah, those are sick.
Pretty solid looking right there.
Oh, the rated R with the Rutgers block R. That's a nice touch.
And just to clarify, we did go through the blackout version where it's reversed and it's black and red, and it just doesn't look the same. It doesn't look as good. So that is the reason why it is like the way it is.
Yep. No, I had the same feedback when you initially showed it to me. So glad to get that on the record as to why it is the way it is. So let's talk about this schedule. There was a few surprises on it that even though we have all the dates for the non-conference games basically wrapped up, even though we had a few of the individual games leak out as to when they would occur, there were still some surprises on the schedule. So I'm just going to pull it up on the screen. You got this nice graphic showing all the games. So let's pull that up. For those of you at home, we will go through it. If you're listening to it on the audio feed, we'll just talk you through the schedule. So let's go through the month of, we're just going to rip through it, and then we'll kind of dive into it deeper. Let's first go to the month of November here. It's all non-conference games. So we have a home game. Opening day is Wednesday, November 6th. That we have Wagner at JMA. The next game is Monday, November 11th. That's St. Peter's at JMA. All these games are known, so I'll go through them a little quicker. Friday, November 15th, we have Monmouth at home at JMA. Merrimack on Wednesday, November 20th for a Jordan Durkak revenge game. That's also at JMA. First road game of the season, Sunday, November 24th at Kennesaw State. That is a game that is largely seen as a Ace Bailey and Jamichael Davis homecoming match. And then we have the Players Era Festival in Vegas. Rutgers plays Notre Dame on Tuesday the 26th. They play Alabama on Wednesday the 27th, and they play Houston on Saturday the 30th. So that's November. That's all games that we were well aware of. Here's where the new stuff starts to come in. Let's go to December now. We get a week off after the Players Era Festival, which will be much needed because they'll play 4 games in a 6-day stretch. Pretty brutal for that time of the year, but given the circumstances, well worth it. They have their first Big Ten matchup on Saturday, December 7th at Ohio State. That's going to be a tough game, tough welcome to the league for a lot of freshmen. And then they play their first home Big Ten game at JMA Tuesday, December 10th against Penn State. Much easier matchup for them. That Saturday, December 14th, we already knew about the Seton Hall matchup. Then they get a week off. The following Saturday, they play Princeton at the Prudential Center. And then they finish off December and the year of 2024 with a matchup against Columbia on Monday, December 30th. That also finishes off the non-conference schedule. From here on out, it is all Big Ten matchups. Let's go to the month of January now. They have a road tilt with Indiana at Assembly Hall on Thursday, January 2nd. Then they follow that up with 3 straight Big Ten home games. Monday, January 6th against Wisconsin. Thursday, January 9th versus Purdue. Monday, January 13th versus UCLA. All those games are at JMA. They follow that up with 2 road games at Nebraska on Thursday, January 16th, and at Penn State, Monday, January 20th. Now, here is the biggest wrinkle of the schedule so far.
Ooh.
Saturday, January 25th. This is supposed to be a Rutgers home game, but as you may have noticed on the press release, it says location to be determined. Now, Rich, let's stop here for a moment. What does to be determined mean?
Tom Izzo gets what Tom Izzo wants, and Tom Izzo does not want to play at Jersey Mike's Arena, and I don't blame him. I get it. Would you want to play at Jersey Mike's Arena with this crowd, and not only this crowd, but this crowd on a year where they have 2 top 3 recruits? Hell no, no one. I wouldn't want to play there. So it's probably going to be MSG. I'm told. Keep an eye out. It's not announced officially, obviously, yet. There's still a lot of logistics behind the scenes they have to figure out, but probably going to be an MSG game. And you know what? Coincidentally, that is on a Saturday. So what do they call it? Big something Saturday, big showdown Saturday, big, I don't know, whatever the Saturday showdown or something like that for the Big Ten. So maybe you'll get a wrestling match in there too. Maybe. Who knows? But
well, the interesting thing about this day specifically is there's no more college football. The NFL playoffs are, I believe that Sunday would be the conference championship games. So there's not a whole lot of football period going on. It is like right in the swing of when basketball season heats up. So this would be a potential national matchup, like you said. So a pretty big opportunity for Rutgers. And, you know, if it's anything like the crowd they got for the last Michigan State game in MSG, it's going to be 95% Rutgers fans. The MSG is going to be sold out. It's going to be a marquee event in the city, and you want one of these games every year, ideally, especially if your team is as good as we expect them to be. So,
I mean, listen, I know people hate the whole give up a home game, go to MSG, but you're New York City's team, basically. So take advantage of it. Plus, this one, you might even sell out MSG. Like it was close last time, and now this time you have the 2 top recruits. Michigan State's going to have a pretty damn good team too. There's really no reason why you shouldn't sell out MSG. And it's not like this is just Rutgers doing this. Like UConn does this every year, trying to get into New York City and call themselves the 17th borough or whatever. But they try to make it so like you go to MSG, like it's the Mecca. I know I hate the Knicks. Trust me, I hate the Knicks more than anyone. But you have to go when they invite you to go.
So that's the biggest wrinkle. We follow that up the following Wednesday with a road matchup at Northwestern. That ends a 19-day streak between games at JMA. So from the January 13th to February 1st, there's not a single game at JMA. I'm sure that's not something that the staff or the program really wants, but they have a home game against Michigan on Saturday, February 1st. Then they follow that up with another home game Wednesday, February 5th versus Illinois. Then the following Sunday, February 9th, they have a road matchup at Maryland. The following Wednesday, they have a home game against Iowa, February 12th. Then they have a back-to-back. It'll be interesting how they do this. They have 2 road games out on the West Coast back-to-back. Sunday, February 16th, they play at Oregon. Then Wednesday, February 19th, they play at Washington. I can't imagine they come back east between that. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of fill those few days in between those games. The next game they have is a home game against USC. That's on Sunday, February 23rd. Then they have a pair of road games Thursday, February 27th at Michigan, and then Tuesday, March 4th at Purdue. Their final game of the season, of the regular season, is Sunday, March 9th versus Minnesota. Then the Big Ten tournament is Wednesday, March 12th through Sunday, March 16th. That is going to be held in Indianapolis, and that is the entire schedule for Rutgers basketball this year. Let's do some high-level looks. Rich, what are some high-level notes or thoughts you have on the schedule now that it's released?
I'd say the Big Ten actually did a relatively good job in terms of because it's not easy with logistics and sending them to the West Coast and the Midwest and here and there. The only one wrinkle I don't like is going from Nebraska back home. So you've got to count for a travel day, and then you got to travel out to Penn State. I know it's drivable; it's 4 hours or 4.5 hours, depending on where you're at. But that's probably the one wrinkle, those 2 games. But the rest is all pretty good. Like, you're going out to the West Coast, you'll probably have, like you said before, a couple days off. I can't see them flying back, so probably hang out there. They'll find, I don't even know where they'll go, but they'll go somewhere to go practice, I'm sure. Sometimes some of these schools are nice enough to let you use their gym, but it's weird when it's like in your conference. So I could imagine them going somewhere else to like a smaller school, and you get to showcase Rutgers a little bit too. Trying to think what else. Michigan, Purdue at the end. It's always Minnesota at the end of the schedule too. I don't know why, but it just always plays out that way. I know people are going to complain about the Prudential Center. People are going to complain about MSG most likely. But I think maybe not the Prudential Center, but you take advantage of the MSG one. But the Prudential Center obviously wasn't supposed to be Princeton. It was supposed to be Arkansas. Coaching changed there, switched everything up. So don't overthink that one. And going down to Kennesaw State, I know people are like, what the hell? Like, the gym is tiny. So if you're planning on going, I would get tickets like ASAP. But for Rutgers to go to like a mid / I guess is ASUN mid-major or low major? I'd say mid-major.
They're probably low major.
Yeah. So for Rutgers to travel there, it's number one, it's a sign of good faith towards Ace Bailey and JaMychal Davis that it's a homecoming game of sorts for them. But also, like, if you see people on Twitter, a lot of people criticized it when it came out. But you also saw the actual basketball people that actually know ball saying, like, wow, this is like a good thing. Like, you never see a high major program do this, like go on the road and play a low major at their home school. So it is cool to see this. And I kind of hope like some of this stuff happens going forward. Maybe not a low major, but like I'd be open to traveling to mid-major schools and just kind of hitting the road more. And hopefully we'll get to see more of the players era going forward, not just this year, but over the next few years. And those games are going to be in the most. That's really it. That is it's going to make or break seeding wise for NCAA tournament time. Because if you win one of the Alabama or Houston games, you're sitting pretty.
Yeah, and as long as you don't get killed by 30 points, it's not going to be held against your resume either. So you just want to be competitive in those games, which I think they will. Some notes I had, only 15 games at the rack this year. Typically they have between 17 or 18. So you're not going to see as many games at the home arena, which is a bit of a bummer. But there's a lot of opportunities for this team to put themselves on platforms to get a lot of eyeballs. So you kind of have to take the good with the bad. Like you said, the Players Era tournament, that's going to be a huge, huge boom for this program. There's going to be a lot of eyeballs in those games. The Princeton game, I kind of like that they're playing at the Prudential Center before the NCAA tournament, and here's why. If you just feel comfortable in a gym and you've played there ahead of time, you're going to feel better the second time. You're used to the rims, you're used to, the sights, like the line, the sight lines. I know that that's something that, what's his name? Hunter Dickinson would talk about. It's like, playing at the rack, you have to get used to like the weird sight lines between like the both hoops at each side of the court. So just to have that kind of like experience playing there with the potential of having, playing at the East Regional for the Sweet 16 is something I think is an underrated element of the schedule. I think getting an opportunity to play at MSG again is huge, not only for, the eyeballs that it'll bring, but also recruiting. Talking about selling out MSG is a huge feather in the cap for the program. And I think getting the West Coast teams on a back-to-back is big. Like it's shitty travel, but at least it's all in the same kind of sweep across the country. And I don't know, I haven't seen any other teams' schedules. Obviously for the West Coast teams, it's logistically more of a nightmare than the East Coast going west because there's fewer of them. But I kind of don't like that January stretch. I think that's going to be the biggest test all season. Playing at Indiana is going to be a much better team than last year. Wisconsin's going to be better. Purdue's going to take a step back, but they're still the national finalist runner-up. That's kind of like going to, I feel like, determine how the season goes is January. Because there's a lot of tough games in there. You have the 3-game homestand followed up by a 4-game non-JMA stand. So I think that's going to be the true proving ground is January this year.
Yeah, I'm intrigued to see how much fans travel this year too. Like I was just looking up Kennesaw State, for example, before the pod. to go for a flight down there in a decent hotel in Kennesaw, it's like $230 plus a ticket. So add in like maybe $50. I can't imagine Kennesaw charging much at all, but actually maybe they might take advantage of it. Who knows? Either way, it's still $300, $400 to go down to Kennesaw, spend a weekend in Atlanta. It's not a bad deal. And then look at some of the other ones. Like if you've never been to Assembly Hall, I know it's post New Year, so it's going to be a lot of people traveling, but that's a cool place to go. Nebraska is actually a really cool one, but Penn State's local-ish you could drive to. Maryland's local-ish you can drive to. You want to make a West Coast trip. Oregon and Washington aren't super far away from each other, but it's like doable if you really wanted to do it. So I mean, there's a lot of opportunities for fans to go on the road this year, and not just on the road because there's also neutral sites between Las Vegas and Prudential and MSG. MSG, I'm telling you, I think that place is going to be wild. And if you don't have a ticket for that one, I'd highly suggest getting one the minute that goes on sale. But it's to be determined still. So just not MSG.
Yeah, I'm sure that the details about that will be wrapped up relatively soon. But yeah, I fully expect that to be an MSG game, like you said. That's kind of all I got on the schedule. About what we expected. There's a few like hot spots, but other than that, really excited for this basketball season. I know we've been basically full bore on football the last month or so, but with now that there's going to be some basketball events coming up, I think it's going to be exciting. Obviously, the schedule dropped today, the 19th. The 28th, they have the open scrimmage. If you haven't heard about that, it's free to attend. There's going to be an inter-squad scrimmage. I believe there's going to be opportunities for you to meet the team. I think there's an NIL opportunity there with partnering with the Knights of the Raritan where you can pay a certain fee and like meet the team. And then on
$45 and you get a poster, an exclusive poster that no one else will have. And you also get autographs afterwards.
Yeah, TBD on who's going to be available for autographs too, because both Ace and Dylan have exclusive deals with Fanatics for autographs. So I don't want everyone to get hyped that they're going to get an autograph from those guys and then they find out they don't. We'll try and find out those details for you ahead of time, but I just want to put that out there that they do have those exclusivity agreements for autographs because on that, like that Topps break the, that whatever event they had with Topps, they weren't signing anything when they were going places. So anyway, and then they have the scrimmage with St. John's on Thursday, October 17th.
Yes.
So that will be for charity. There will be tickets sold. The ticket office has not put those up for sale yet. We will let you know when they're expected to go on sale. But that, I mean, honestly, if it was a Saturday, I think this game would sell out. I think it'll be close to a sellout. This might be the only opportunity you have as a fan to get a decently priced ticket to see this team this year at Jersey Mike's. So if you're not a season ticket holder and want to see them, keep on the lookout for when those go live because that is going to be a pretty cool atmosphere, in my opinion.
So I was told, and I'm reading this press release from Rutgers right now. Obviously, October 17th, St. John's exhibition game. All proceeds will go to Jimmy V Foundation for Pediatric Cancer Research. If you want a ticket, contact the Rutgers Athletics ticket office for all types of ticket information. 866-445-GO-RU. So I would probably call that ASAP if you want a ticket.
So that is all of the other basketball-related things leading up to the season, which opens on November 6th. Like we kind of already said, Jon Rothstein was at practice yesterday. He attends basically every high major programs practice, at least in the Northeast, once a year. This year was no different. He had some really high praise for a lot of the players. He compared Ace Bailey to Jabari Smith with a handle, and Jabari Smith's biggest weakness coming out of the draft was that he had no handle, and he was a top 3 pick. So if he's saying that about, I got to stop sharing this. My bad. If he's saying that about Jabari, or if he's saying that about Ace, he's obviously sees a ton of potential in him. He was talking about how Ace defended 1 through 5 in practice and did it well. He spoke very highly of JaMychal Davis. I think his starting lineup projection was not necessarily what I think is going to happen.
No,
but he had the projected starters as Dylan Harper, obviously, Ace Bailey, obviously, but then you had Jeremiah Williams, which is the other obvious one, JaMychal Davis, and Emmanuel Agbole. So I don't think that's going to be the starting lineup. I think you want to see a lineup with more balance and more shooting, at least from the starters. So I don't think that'll necessarily be the way Pike goes, but maybe those are just the 5 guys that stood out most to Rothstein at practice. What were some of the other things that surprised you that Rothstein had to say?
Well, I thought the Jabari Smith comparison was kind of lazy, to be honest with you. I mean,
didn't they go to the same school?
So they both are from Georgia. They're like,
no, I think Jabari Smith literally went to McEachern.
If he went to McEachern too? I thought he went to Sandy Creek, but I could be wrong. Maybe he did go to McEachern. You might be right on that.
No, you did go to Sandy Creek. You're right.
Yeah. But I mean, like it's like a Georgia kid. Like, oh, he actually, yeah, did he go to McEachern before? Either way, whatever. Georgia kid, almost the same build as Ace Bailey. Now I'm looking back at Jabari Smith's stats from his college days. He only averaged 5 3-pointers per game. I'd be a little shocked if that's all Ace average. I think he's going to shoot a lot more than that. But if Ace shoots 42% from 3, I mean, hell, geez. Add that with his athleticism. I think he's a more, and it's crazy to say this, I think Ace is more bouncy, more athletic, more Showtime type of player than Jabari Smith. And like Rothstein said, he's got a better handle than Jabari Smith.
Yep.
Now, mind you, Jabari Smith still averaged 17 and 7 on the year, and he was a first-team All-American for Auburn. Yeah. I think it's, I mean, if he's that great with a handle, even better. Like,
right.
But I thought that was just a little lazy. And then the starting lineups thing, I love JaMychal Davis. He's going to play a lot this year. I just don't see him as a starter. You can't surround, and Joe Jackson CBB on Twitter does a great job of covering college basketball in general. Very knowledgeable, very ultimate ball knower, put it like that. And he said it best. You cannot surround Ace and Dylan with a bunch of guys that can't shoot. You need to put shooters out there. And it's no knock on JaMychal Davis. Well, maybe a slight knock, but I need him off the bench. He's going to be a little bit of a spark plug off that bench. I think Zach Martini's still the starter at the 4, especially in the Big Ten, where I don't know if Ace is going to play a ton of 4. Can he play 4? Yes, but in the Big Ten, these 4s are thick and big guys. Like, you need someone that the Ace would get bullied a little bit down in the post. Whereas Zach Martini played the center position last year for Princeton. He's not going to play center much at Rutgers this year, but he might be a little bit at center. But for the most part, I think he fits in that 4 role too, and he's a great outside shooter. Add that with Dylan and Jeremiah, and then you got Tyson Acuff who could shoot. You got PJ Hayes who can kind of rotate in as a sharpshooter from the outside. It's going to be interesting because there's so many options. I just don't see the lineup that Rothstein as a starting option.
Yep, I totally agree. I think Rothstein's just kind of going off what he saw with the best guys that he saw in practice that day, which, you've been to multiple practices now. That's how basketball works. You're going to have a hot, shooting day, and you're going to look like the best guy in the court. And then it's like, well, you should have seen him yesterday. He was, a little cold, but I think, like you said, I think you got to have one of Martini or Hayes in the starting lineup because they're the sharpshooters, like you said.
And Hayes could play the 4 sort of at times too. There's that thicker body guy. I know he's a guard / wing, but he's big enough that he's probably built in the same mold as probably like a Ron Harper Jr. Like, Ron was only 6'5", 6'6", playing the 4, and he was 240-ish, 250-ish.
That's a good point. They're both bigger body guys. I could see that playing a similar role, rather.
I'm not saying he's going to do it full time, but it's an option.
Yeah, but that's the thing is, like, Pikel's teams have largely been anchored by a defensive stopper in the middle for the last 6-7 years between Miles Davis and Cliff Omori. Like, Johnson. Even when you had what did I say? Miles
Davis.
Oh my goodness. I have not had enough coffee today. Yeah. Miles Johnson. Jesus. I was thinking JaMychal Davis, Miles. Yeah.
Call me Miles Davis.
And the singer. Yeah.
Share a birthday.
And then even
what'd you say? I said I share a birthday with him. Fun fact.
Cool. And even a guy like CJ Geddes, when they had him for a year, he was,
forgot about him.
The focus in the middle. And since they don't really have a true, defensive stopper / standout center anymore, the book's kind of out on Ibole, but they're going to have to by force run something that they haven't run before, offensively and defensively. So I think Michael's capable of it. I just think he hasn't had this kind of arsenal at his disposal, and we'll just have to see how he implements, what he wants to do. But
yeah.
I trust that he's got a plan, and we're going to see it in action. So,
yep. So,
let's move over to a little bit of football talk. We want to thank. Go for it.
I didn't mean to cut you off. Real quick, Kelvin Odih has rescheduled his official visit from. This man has rescheduled his official visit about 4 different times. Rescheduled his official visit from originally it was September 27th weekend. Then it was October 4th weekend, which he changed it what am I looking at? 2 weeks ago. And now he changed it again this week and will now be on campus this upcoming weekend. Starting tomorrow, he will be there. For those that don't know, Kelvin Odih is a South Kent school prospect. Well, actually not anymore. Was from South Kent School in Connecticut. His head coach, Ralph, I'm going to say this wrong, Chilius, just accepted a job with the Memphis Grizzlies this offseason. So now he ended up transferring schools to Southern Cal Academy in California. Now, normally when a kid does that, when like a kid leaves like New Jersey and goes to like IMG and a kid goes there and goes all the way across the country, it sounds like bad news for Rutgers. Not the case here. TJ Thompson actually played for SoCal Academy's head coach, Chris Chaney, back in high school. So there is a little bit of a connection there. Rutgers has actually sent out a couple offers to SoCal Academy kids over the past couple of cycles. Juice Limbodo is one of them. He's now at High Point. He actually was one of the better players in the country for that level of basketball, low major. But besides the point, Kelvin Odih is not ranked currently. He will be ranked on Monday when the new 150 rankings come out. High-level kid. The fact that they're getting him on campus this weekend is huge. He visited for an unofficial last year around this time. And if you read the quotes, he's already like, hey, it's going to be totally different this year. I can feel it. And it's like, yeah, it's completely different. But interestingly enough, between Kelvin Odih and between Gevonta Ware, who I'm very close to putting in a future cast for, they both play in the new Puma League. And it's like the new EYBL version. Maybe nothing to read into, but the fact that Rutgers is trying to, I guess, get more involved with the Puma League is interesting enough. But and it's also starting to kind of take off a little bit. Now it's not at the level of the EYBL. It's not at the level of the Adidas SSB League yet, but it's getting there. It's pretty close. But they also are hosting Lino Mark currently, another California kid on an official visit right now. His recruitment's weird. I really don't know how to get a read on it, but it sounds like West Virginia and Seton Hall are the main competition there. So just keep an eye out for some Rutgers basketball recruiting news. I think there's a good shot they're at least going to get 1, if not 2 kids signed this November. And I'd say Gevonta Ware is most likely going to be one of them. And Kelvin Odih or Lino Mark could be that second one. And not to mention that kid, what's his name? Kiyan Anthony? Never heard of him before.
Anthony, yeah.
Kiyan, I knew I was going to fuck it up too. I had it in my head. Kiyan Anthony scheduled an official visit to Rutgers the weekend of October 4th. If you don't know who Kiyan Anthony is, the son of Carmelo, top 35 prospect, freaky good player. Long Island
he had
Lutheran.
a huge breakout this summer too. I think everyone was. I think with these kids who are their parents are like professional athletes. I think a lot of people's inclination is to think like, oh, he's he's so and so's kid. He's not that good. But Kiyan Anthony like exploded this summer. So really huge to get him on campus. Another guy who I think is trending away from Rutgers, but has Rutgers in his final 2 is Mason Blackwood. I believe he's announcing, or he committed yesterday. So he committed to Penn State. So a bit of a bummer there. He was a guy that Rutgers liked, but what kind of led him away from Rutgers?
It was more so Rutgers was looking elsewhere. Like they stopped recruiting him. I shouldn't say stopped recruiting him because you never stop because you still send texts no matter what.
Prioritized guys higher than him.
Yeah, like Kelvin Odih is one to keep a close eye on. I think they have him higher on the board. I mean, Anthony is obviously number 1 on the board at the moment. If you can land him, great. I'm told they actually have a better shot than people think there. Interestingly enough, I believe he has a deal with Fanatics as well, which shocker. Carmelo Anthony's kid has a deal with like one of the biggest names out there. But yeah, I was told that yesterday there's some talk that Rutgers has a better shot than people think.
Hmm.
Now he's going to take a couple more official visits. He is at USC next weekend, the
Okay.
26th. He will be at Rutgers the 4th, and then Florida State on the 13th, and then Syracuse to end it on the 18th. I'd say Rutgers is probably among the top three of those four schools right there. Can they impress enough to somehow convince convince him not to go to Syracuse? Kind of wait and see. But Carmelo has a really tight relationship with the Syracuse head coach currently. Kid's been to Syracuse, I don't even know, countless times. It just kind of seems like it's heading that way. But Rutgers has a shot at least, and get him to campus. Who knows? I just kind of hope they get a photo of Carmelo in a Rutgers jersey because that would be hilarious.
That would be great. I think Rutgers actually beat Syracuse the year they won the national title at the RAC when Carmelo was there. So I don't think necessarily has the fondest of memories of
No, I'm sure
visiting
not.
Rutgers, but um, they can never take that away from us. We beat the
Yeah,
national champions that year.
that is true.
Um, all right,
That's
now
it.
let's actually. What'd you say?
I said that's it though. That's all I
Yeah.
got.
So some recruiting updates there for those who have been wondering what's going on with Rutgers hoops recruiting. Let's transition to some football. I got 3 keys. I think Richie's got his keys as well to
Yeah.
beating Virginia Tech this upcoming weekend. I'll do my first one, then Richie will do his first, and we'll go back and forth. My first key to beating Virginia Tech is generating a pass rush. So this season, Rutgers only has 3 sacks in 2 games against some pretty inferior competition. They've had a decent amount of pressures, but it looks to be the same issues they've had the last few years in terms of actually turning those pressures into sacks. I'm hoping that we get Tyreem Powell and that we get Wesley Bailey back this weekend because that'll certainly help. Because a lot of sacks are more so coverage sacks than guys winning one-on-one battles against linemen. It's more so that you know you covered so well that there's nobody open and you take a sack.
Mm-hmm.
Tyreem Powell was our best coverage linebacker last year, and I think while an Achilles injury is a scary proposition, I think the advances that medical technology have made with Achilles injuries the last few years have been pretty substantial. They have this new
Oh yeah.
procedure where they have this they call it like a speed bridge, which
Mm-hmm.
they take they basically like put like two instead of just like buckling into like one part of the tendon, they put it into two, so it helps brace it.
Mm-hmm.
To oversimplify it massively. So I think Tyreem Powell could come back close to 100% whenever he's actually put back into the game. So if they can get pressure on Kyron Drones with regularity in this game, I think it'll go a long way to securing a victory. What's your first key to beating Virginia Tech this upcoming weekend?
I think you just got to establish a pass game. Now, we know their running defense kind of stinks, but if you can establish a pass game, that's going to open up so many things for this run game. We already know how good Kyle Monangai is. We know how good this offensive line has been through 2 weeks. Mind you, Akron and Howard, so take it with a grain of salt. But if they can establish a little bit of a pass game and make them not stack the box on you against Kyle
Yeah.
Monangai, then it's game over. I think between Chris Long, between Dymere Miller, we've seen both of them flash a little bit. Maybe we'll see an Ian Strong game because he's the only one of the starters that really hasn't stood out so far. I shouldn't say stood out, but he just hasn't had a big pass game yet or a reception game yet. But yeah, I think if you open up that pass game, it should just open up the entire offense as a whole, and it kind of gives Kirk Shiraka a free reign to do just about anything.
Yep.
I mean, these inside zone runs have been great, but if they're going to sell out for the run, it's going to be tough if you can't get a pass game going. So I think you got to open up that pass game a little bit more. Maybe show a little bit of the playbook, Kirk. Like, let's see what you got. Let's see what else you got instead of an inside zone mesh run. Like,
Yeah. Kind of bouncing off that, my second key is that Rutgers needs to get its fair share of explosive runs. Virginia Tech has allowed a lot of explosive runs this year of 20 plus yards. They allowed 3 last week to a really bad ODU team. I think ODU is averaging like about 140 yards on the ground. I'm trying to pull up my stats here, but they really just kind of broke out last week against Virginia Tech. So ODU was averaging 101 yards rushing in the 2 games prior to Virginia Tech. And last week they had 39 carries for 143 yards and 2 touchdowns. That included 3 explosive runs of 32 yards, 48 yards, and 65 yards, which went for a touchdown. You only have one other explosive run all season, and that was against South Carolina. So 3 of their 4 runs of 20-plus yards came against the Hokies. Marshall, a similar story. They have 2 explosive runs against Virginia Tech of 21 yards and 69 yards, which went for a touchdown. Nice. Marshall only has one other run of 20-plus yards all season, and that came against an FCS opponent. And then Vanderbilt had 1 explosive run, but that was basically they were basically running like a wishbone, pistol offense all game. So you don't typically get huge runs out of that. It's more of like you grind the opponent down. Mm-hmm. So I think Kyle Monungai needs to have a similar game where he's getting 3 or 4 big runs, and it's primarily because Virginia Tech has really struggled with run fits in the run game, where linebackers are there's either poor communication, or they're trying to, plug the wrong hole, or they're, going all out for, in the RPO game, tackling the running back, and then the quarterback runs for a huge gain. So I think we're going to need to have a few of those on Saturday to secure a win. What's your second key to beating Virginia Tech?
I'd say you have to kind of contain Kyron Drones. We know Rutgers has had fits under Greg Schiano with mobile quarterbacks. Most of the time it's been a backup quarterback, ironically. But this is not the case here. He's had 7 games of 60 yards, 60 rushing yards or more in these past year. And what is it? This is going to be game 4 for them. Year in game 4 for Kyron Drones. He hasn't even done it for a full season yet, but he's shown flashes that he can. He had 176 yards in the bowl game against Tulane. He had 117 rushing yards against Old Dominion, 135 against Boston College last year. We saw him kind of not carve up Rutgers on the rushing attack last year, but he had 22 for 74 from the quarterback position last year. Now, mind you, that's also him probably just getting attacked and pressured a ton from that Rutgers defensive line last season, but I think you have to contain him. Now, you have the linebackers that are a little bit green, so you got to hope that they're ready and up for the challenge. It's not going to be easy. In an ideal world, you get Tyreen Powell back, but it's still to be determined. We won't really know until probably about 2 hours before on Saturday. And I don't even know if you'll know then, because I could just see them putting him as questionable and just being like, hey, gotcha. Surprise. Yep. It's fine. But I think you have to contain the rushing attack from the quarterback position specifically. So hopefully they can do that.
Totally agree there. My final key is taking advantage of the special teams miscues that Virginia Tech will probably present you. So Virginia Tech, it's a 3-game season. They've already had 2 kicks blocked this season. They had a field goal blocked against Old Dominion. They had a punt blocked against Marshall. And then in the Vanderbilt game, they had just a huge miscue where they had 2 players with the same jersey number on the field on a punt, which was a penalty, which resulted in Vanderbilt getting pushed into field goal range, which they turned into a long field goal. So Virginia Tech has shown they're pretty sloppy on special teams. I smell a punt block coming. We've had a few that were close this year. I linked the punt block against Marshall in the thread on the board if you want to check it out. I smell it coming. I think it's going to happen. And those are some of the biggest momentum flipping plays in football. A punt block, I don't know what it is about it. It's bigger than an interception. It's bigger than a strip sack fumble. I don't know what it is about that momentum swing, but a punt block is arguably the biggest momentum swinging play in football, and I think they get one on Saturday. Yeah. What's your third key?
I'm glad you said that, because the guy Are You Nuts on our board was actually texting me the other day. He's like, we're getting a punt block. This is the week. We're doing it. And I'm like, I think you posted it. And like literally minutes later, he texts me again. He's like, I told you. Did you talk to Mike? Does he know? And I was like, no. Like, he just posted it. Yeah. But yeah, no, I think Rutgers just has to continue to do what they're good at. And I think red zone defense is what they're damn good at. They're top 10 right now in red zone defense in FBS. 11 of the 13 trips they've stopped people. Now looking at Virginia Tech, they're currently last year they were 105th in FBS on 27 touchdowns on 52 trips to the red zone. This year they're worse. They're 106 with 6 touchdowns on 13 trips. I think as long as you can just get them to settle for a field goal, or even stop them if they're going to go for it on 4th, maybe just stop a turnover on downs or something like that, but continue to just play really good red zone defense, and don't get discouraged if they get to that red zone area, because they've gotten there a couple times against some decent opponents. I don't even know if I'd say decent, but they've gotten there, but they haven't been able to convert. If you can just hold them to field goals, you most likely will win the game unless you're the New York Giants.
Oh man, too real for you guys right now.
Yeah.
I almost feel bad for Giants fans, but I'm commiserating as well as an Eagles fan. That was an all-time pants shitting on Monday night by the coaching staff.
Hate watched the hell out of Saquon.
Yeah, that was rough.
Yeah,
I think they had like over a 99% chance of winning the game at one point late in the game, and of course they found a way to lose.
Yep. So we'll see.
All right, so those are the keys for beating Virginia Tech. We want to thank David Cunningham once again for coming on yesterday. I hope you guys all enjoyed that and got a ton of information out of it for Saturday. We will have a live show after the game, TBD on who will actually be joining us for that, but we will have one for you. We'll be able to actually do it a lot quicker because we won't be actually physically at the game. So I imagine within a half hour of the game ending, we'll have a live show going to talk everything about the Rutgers Virginia Tech game. But that's kind of all I got. Rich, is there anything else you wanted to talk about before we head out of here?
Two things. Number one, ACC network's kind of funky. I know a lot of people are complaining about it already. I think ESPN Plus, you can just stream it on there, no problem, no issues at all. So that's probably your best bet. If you don't have ESPN Plus, just sign up for that, or like Fubo or one of these like TV apps for a month and just cancel it. It's going to cost you like $10, or just go to a bar. I'm sure one of the bars will have it. But number two, Yankees made the playoffs, baby. We're back. World Series 28 incoming.
Don't know about that, but probably congrats on making the playoffs. I mean, it should just be a yearly thing for the Yankees, but it's proven to be more difficult than you would think for a team that spends more money than almost any other club in baseball. But congrats on making the playoffs. Hopefully they don't break your heart again. Hopefully you don't run into the Houston Astros once again in the playoffs to just decimate your dreams. But
it's been rough.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone. Thanks to everybody who has rated, reviewed, told a friend, subscribed to the YouTube channel, followed us on your favorite podcasting app. If you haven't already and you're a longtime listener, what are you doing? What are you waiting for?
Yeah, seriously.
It's the smallest show of gratitude that you can make to us for the show. For already everybody who has, again, we really appreciate it. It's helped grow the show tremendously, and we hope to continue to grow it through what we hope is continuing to be a banner year in Rutgers athletics. But for me and Richie, this has been another edition of the Knight Report podcast, signing off.